How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling by Frank Bettger. Chapter 10. How I Learned to Find the Most Important Reason Why a Man Should Buy. There was a story going around one time about a big, strong man in a New York nightclub who was offering to allow anybody in the audience to hit him in the stomach as hard as they could. Several men tried it, including Jack Dempsey, it was said, but the blows never seemed to faze the strong man. One night in the rear of the audience was a big, powerful Swede who couldn't understand a word of English. Someone said he could strike a mighty blow. The master of ceremonies went back and finally made the Swede understand by pantomime that they wanted him to go up to hit the strong man. The Swede went up, took off his coat, and rolled up his sleeves. The strong man swelled up his chest with a deep breath and braced himself for the blow. The Swede swung from the floor, but instead of striking him in the stomach, landed one right on the strong man's jaw and knocked him out. Because of a misunderstanding of what he was supposed to do, the big Swede had unknowingly applied one of the major rules of selling. He picked out the most vulnerable point and concentrated everything on that one point alone, the key issue. The prospect himself doesn't always realize what his vital need is. Let's take the example of Mr. Booth, the silk manufacturer in New York. He thought that the key issue was where he could get insurance at the lowest cost. He was going to get down to the bottom of this thing. He had insurance men on his heels day and night. It was just like everybody hitting the strong man in the stomach. I found that by questioning the businessman, I got his mind off what he thought was the real issue and got him back on the track of what was really the most vital issue of all. The first thing I remember reading that made me stop and think how important it is to find the key issue was something that Lincoln said. Much of my success as a trial lawyer lay in the fact that I was always willing to give the opposing attorney 6 points in order to gain the 7th, if the 7th was the most important. The Rock Island Railroad trial, to which we shall refer later on, is a superb example of how Lincoln applied this rule. On the closing day of the trial, the opposing lawyer took 2 hours to sum up the case. Lincoln could have taken time to argue several points that his opponent made, but rather than risk confusing the jury, Lincoln waived all but one thing, the key issue. That took him less than 1 minute, but it won the case. I have talked with thousands of salesmen and find that many of them pay no attention at all to the key issue. Oh yes, they have read about it. But what is the key issue? Let's simplify it. Isn't it just this? What is the basic need? Or what is the main point of interest, the most vulnerable point? How can you get at the key issue? Encourage your prospect to talk. As soon as a man gives you 4 or 5 reasons why he won't buy, and you try to argue each one, you aren't going to sell him. If you just get him to keep on talking, he will help you sell him. Why? Because he will pick out of these 4 or 5 things, the one thing that is the most important, and stick to it. Sometimes you don't have to say a word. That's when he gets all through, come back to that one point. Usually, that's the true one. Several years ago, I attended a national sales convention in Pittsburgh. William G. Power, public relations executive of the Chevrolet Motor Company, told this story. I was about to buy a home in Detroit. I called a real estate man. He was one of the smartest salesmen I've ever met. He listened as I talked, and after a while found out that all my life I had wanted to own a tree. He drove me about 12 miles from Detroit and looked into the backyard of a house in a nicely wooded section. He said, "Look at those gorgeous trees, 18 of them." I looked at those trees, I admired them, and I asked him the price of the house. He said, X dollars. I said, "Get out your pencil and sharpen it." He wouldn't shade the price a nickel. What are you talking about? I said, "I can buy a house just like that for less money." He said, "If you can, more power to you. But look at those trees. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each time I talked price, he counted those trees. He sold me the 18 trees and threw in the house. That is salesmanship. He listened until he found out what I wanted and then sold it to me. I have walked away from many sales just by letting a man take me all around Robin Hood's barn. and I have tried to answer them all in full. Then the telephone would ring, and he would say, I'm not going to do anything for a while. Gradually, by trial and error, I have found the thing to do is agree with everything he says until I find out what is the real reason he isn't buying. Many prospects try to mislead you. In the next 2 chapters, I will show how I use 2 simple little questions to determine whether an objection is real, and a method I found so effective in bringing out the hidden reason. Summed up, the main problem in the sale is to 1. Find the basic need, or 2. The main point of interest, and 3. Then stick to it.